Hey, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead, and I'm at the hospital with my son, but they just took him to do some tests, so I thought I would read you the story. We're in the new book today, and it's called Ghost of the Moaning Mansion. So, I'm going to read that. Chapter 1, Trouble, Trouble from Two Sources. If DJ Dillon had guessed what a scary, spooky experience was ahead, he wouldn't have scoffed when he heard what his grandfather said. Yes, sirree, I'm going to catch that there ghost, or whatever it is, and make it plumb sorry it ever started scaring decent folk again. DJ and Mrs. Keene, his 8th grade teacher at Stony Ridge Grammar School, were sitting in an old couch at Grandpa Dillon's small rented house in the country. The boy's father had driven Mrs. Keene and DJ to see Grandpa. Dad Dillon was now outside splitting firewood by the back door. There was still a week of the vacation left between Christmas and the New Year. The weather was clear and crisp. Let's see. At the 3,500 foot level of the California Sierra Nevada mountains, with some snow on the ground. Grandpa, the tall, slender 13-year-old boy, said through stifled laughter, "Since there are no real ghosts, how are you going to catch one?" Grandpa Dillon was a feisty little man who once had been known for having an ornery streak as wide as a barn door. He was slightly stoop-shouldered from years of plowing, but his eyes were bright and teasing behind the wire-rimmed bifocals. "I know that, and you know that. But does the ghost know that?" Mrs. Ouida King adjusted her glasses on her nose and got up. DJ thought she had probably been pretty when she was young. She had married late, never had a child, and had been a widow for the last 5 years. She and Grandpa had grown up together back in Oklahoma. In her 35th year of teaching at Stony Ridge, 2 stories grammar school, Mrs. Keene was as small as a dried-up apple core. Her brown eyes showed the strain she'd been under. DJ remembered when her short hair was brownish gray. She walked towards the window and looked out over at the mountains. DJ thought she could probably see his father splitting firewood because DJ could hear them all hitting the oak. "Now, Caleb," she said, "you mustn't tease DJ about such things. One of his favorite pastimes of the pioneers was the telling of tall tales. This is just one of them. You just hold on a second, Ouida. Something's mighty peculiar been going on in that spooky old mansion you bought at the Devil's Law, and I'm going to find out what it is." Grandpa shoved himself to his feet with the aid of his cane that he called his Irish shillelagh. It skidded on the faded print linoleum floor, and the old man almost fell. Grandpa leaped up and grabbed a thin arm. DJ leaped up and grabbed a thin arm. "You okay, Grandpa?" "Reckon so, DJ." The old man lifted the cane and tipped the end so the boy and the woman could see. Rubber tips split. Front part busted open so the wood hits the slick linoleum. "Next time I go to town, I'll have to get a new tip." "You were saying, Caleb?" the teacher prompted, just as she did in history class when DJ was having a hard time. "I was saying, that I don't know how you're so downright sure this is a ghost, or whatever it is, isn't real. Didn't you tell me last Sunday at church that some people claim to have seen it? And lots of folks heard it, didn't you say that? As a Christian woman, I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. I know you don't either, so stop teasing, DJ. I was merely explaining what was being said and what's been happening lately. DJ shook his blonde hair away from his blue eyes. Mrs. Keene, you said most people had forgotten about the ghost until recently. Exactly, DJ. It was only a legend, sometimes written in the Timbergold County Historical Society's newsletters. That is, until shortly after I invested my life savings into the mansion. I thought it would make a delightful bed and breakfast inn. But who's going to stay in a 100-year-old mansion that's supposed to be haunted by a Chinese ghost? Even though Stony Ridge School had no retirement program or pension for teachers, everyone knew Mrs. Keene had saved enough that she planned to retire next June. She intended to move 1,500 feet lower down the Sierras to Motherlode County. That's where the California gold rush had taken place in the early 1850s. There's a mansion that had been built outside the town Devil's Law. Mrs. Keene had bought that place about a year before. Many Motherlode towns had funny names, like Bedbug, Rough and Ready, or Hangtown. In the early days, many such communities were lawless, but it was said that this one was worse than all the others. That is, no law except Satan's. So that place was called Devil's Law. Grandpa Dillon ran a blue-veined hand, thin and brown spotted from age, across his chin. That's why I told you I'd go over and have a look-see. It's the least an old friend can do for a pretty school marm, Mrs. King sputtered. Caleb, you haven't changed since we were children. Don't you start giving me any of your blarney. Anyway, I wouldn't let you do it except maybe an outsider like you might see something I've overlooked. DJ studied the two people with curiosity. They were among his favorite friends. It was sort of strange, knowing these two adults had been friends for 50 years or more. The boy had heard the story often enough. Mrs. Keene had left the small Oklahoma farming community and gone on to college. Caleb Dillon had been forced to drop out of grammar school to help his parents, who were tenant farmers. Grandpa and Mrs. Keene hadn't seen each other for many years. Then she returned to Oklahoma for the 25th reunion of her high school graduation class. She was then a teacher at Stony Ridge, California. She'd invited Caleb and his wife to come visit someday. When Grandma Dillon died, Grandpa talked his son and daughter-in-law into visiting Stony Ridge. Sam Dillon, DJ's father, liked the area. So did his wife. They settled there, and DJ was born in Timbergold County. DJ's mother had been killed in an auto accident a few years ago, and Dad Dillon had remarried. What? Grandpa sputtered as though he'd tasted a mouthful of vinegar by mistake. You keep me from having more fun than I'd have in many of a year? I'm going to sneak up there on that ghost and catch him. DJ laughed. How are you going to do that, Grandpa? Don't rightly know yet, DJ, but I'm going to have to find a way. The boy stood up. He was taller than any boy in his class, though he was as thin as a rake handle. Grandpa, you're going to need help. The old man snorted and peered over the rim of his bifocals. Don't need any help catching something that never was. Just the same, Grandpa, I want to go with you. I was a figuring on you taking care of Stranger while I was gone. DJ liked Grandpa's dog, but he liked adventure more. You could get a friend from church to take care of Stranger, then I could go with you. Grandpa hesitated. As Dad Dillon came through the back door. with an armload of oak and madrone for the wood-burning stove. What's this about going somewhere, DJ? I want to go with Grandpa and help him investigate the problems Mrs. Keene is having at the house she bought at Devil's Law. Dad Dillon was a powerfully built man who loved physical things. Even splitting firewood was a pleasure for him. He tossed the armload of wood into a large metal-lined box in the corner. Remember what we discussed when Christmas vacation started, DJ? You're not going anywhere until you get your history paper written. Aw, Dad. You had all semester to get that paper done. Now you've got to finish it before school starts again the first week of January, or you're liable to flunk. Isn't that right, Mrs. Keene? Well, Mr. Dillon, the state does mandate a student be proficient in certain basic areas, including California history. While DJ is a very good student, he's been derelict in not completing the required essay. Dad nodded. And that's serious, right? Well, DJ does face the possibility of being held back a year and not graduating with his class this spring unless... Dad interrupted. That settles it, DJ. You're not going anywhere till you write that paper. But I don't even have any ideas. How can I write about something I don't have anything to write about? Dad removed his heavy leather gloves. You can think about that while we're driving your grandfather to the bus. Mrs. Keene exclaimed. Bus? I thought you'd drive Caleb down to the mansion. Plan to, but I got a couple of late orders for firewood that have got to be delivered, so he'll just have to take the bus. Oh, Caleb, I'm sorry. It's such an imposition. If I could only see well enough to drive anymore. Grandpa stopped Mrs. Keene with a chuckle. I've ridden the bus many a time. Besides, I can sneak up on that there ghost because he won't know I'm a-comin'. Oh, and I couldn't let you do that, Caleb. I'll phone ahead and have Miss Heron meet you at the bus depot. DJ recognized the name of the housekeeper who had been living at the mansion since before Mrs. Keene bought it. No, you don't. Nary a word to anybody. I'm going to catch that there ghost, or whatever it is, my way. That means nobody knows I'm coming. Absolutely nobody. Now you can all visit a spell while I pack. Then we can ride to Stony Ridge together. DJ was both sad and excited as he rode into town with his father, his teacher, and his grandfather. DJ wanted to help chase the ghost more than anything, especially more than writing a history essay, but Dad Dillon had spoken, and that was that. So they put Grandpa on the bus and took Mrs. Keene to her small, neat house. Then DJ and his father went home. That night, DJ unsuccessfully tried to come up with an idea for his history paper, but his mind wouldn't stay on the subject. He wanted to share Grandpa's adventures. At least DJ wanted to talk about the ghost to his best friend, Alfred Milford, but Alfred didn't have a telephone. DJ went to bed without writing one line on his essay. He awoke the next morning to hear Dad's voice down the hallway. He was obviously talking on the telephone. Give that to me again, Mrs. Keene, Dad said. DJ could tell by his father's tone that something was wrong. He slid out of bed, grabbed his robe, and hurried down the hall to the kitchen. DJ nodded, sensing something was wrong. She was just talking to the housekeeper at the mansion. And? DJ prompted, feeling his fears rise. Your grandfather didn't arrive there. What do you mean, Dad? Dad said quietly. He never showed up. He disappeared. Whew. Wow, now that's a beginning of the story. So I hope you are going to enjoy this one. It's the newest one in the DJ Dillon series. In fact, this is book number, let's see, 8. We're already on 8 out of 10. So I just want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house, out of your house, in the day and the night. And whatever you do, keep dreaming. And if you would, please say a prayer for my son, Jason. All right. Good night. I love you.